everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Data Dojo. Today I have a very special guest, Sadie Lawrence. And how do I introduce her? She's a multi-talented person. She's a podcast host. She's the founder of a community I am deeply associated with, Women in Data. She's also the founder of Human Machine Collaboration Institute, which I'm very curious to know about. And she's an author, and she has a big influence on LinkedIn as well. So, Sadie, thank you so much for joining us today. Just to start off with, tell us about your story, how you transitioned from neuroscience to AI, and how you've been wearing so many multiple hats.
Yeah, such a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for being a part of the Women in Data community and leading our San Francisco chapter. So I appreciate everything you're doing to share knowledge within the community as well. So my journey started as many as a winding path. When I was growing up, the term data science didn't even exist yet. We had no idea what the world of AI was going to be. And there were a few leaders ahead of us who knew what it was, but I would say very few. And so for me, I grew up on a farm in Iowa, and what I was interested in at the time was playing the piano. So my first degree was actually piano performance. And one of the things that I love about college is you have to take general education classes. And I feel like one of the reasons they have you do this is to just double check and make sure you're in the right degree, if that makes sense. Yeah. And so through general education classes, I really fell in love with the scientific method and wanted to branch off and study music in the brain. And so at the time, my university only had psychology degrees, so I transitioned into a psychology degree and started working in labs, and then worked in a neuroscience lab once I had graduated. And I really had the intention to go and get my PhD in neuroscience, until one day I was in the lab, and after taking care of my rodents for months and months and trying to get a very small piece of data from working with them all the time, I had to euthanize them because it was done with the experiment. And so through this process, I just realized, I'm like, this is not how I want to spend my time. This is not how I see my future. And working in a lab was quite slow. So I was lucky enough to go home and write on a piece of paper what I liked about my job and what I didn't. And so I went to Google search to see, how do I keep all the things I like and get rid of the things I don't? And that's what led me to data science. And one of the things that I really value in myself is listening to my intuition. And when I get the intuition that it's time to change directions or start something new, I really take action right away. And so I quit my job at the lab that Monday and started looking for any job in data, and then switched to a master's in data science. And I've really never looked back. I love the world of technology because there's so much opportunity in terms of the companies you can work with and what you can create. And now what I've been able to do in creating my own companies and communities, and it's really been a exciting career, and I feel like it's still just beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really love and appreciate and admire people whose stories is so unconventional, because I am coming from a very traditional checklist path, like do your bachelor's in computer science and pivot to data science, which is it's still under the umbrella of STEM. So when I hear stories like these, it's really inspiring, and I hope our viewers also appreciate it and relate to it. You talked about starting your own companies and communities, and Women in Data is such a powerful community because when you started, there were not many communities like that. And we see many communities now, but back when you started, there were very few communities, and it encouraged many of us, including myself, to get to know other people, especially who are trying to pursue a data career, and learn from them, because I know that I found people from Google and Facebook and all of these dream companies within the part of the community, and it's such an empowering way to just talk to them or chat with them, which is usually very difficult to get hold of people like them. So want to know what was the exact moment that triggered you, hey, this is a gap and I should fix it?
Yeah, so I love the quote, necessity is the mother of all invention. And it definitely was the creation of Women in Data. For me, I was 1 year into my master's program and working in the field, and I looked around me and just didn't have many women to collaborate with and share with, and realized that if I was going to stay in this field, I needed other people to connect with and to collaborate with. And unfortunately, there was nothing in my local community. And at that time, I was like, I'm working full time and getting a master's degree. Like, I'm not the person to start this. But at the end of the day, I'm like, Sadie, you want this. You want to have a community. And so, like, find a way to make it happen. And so it really came from like a personal need of wanting community, but also just looking at the industry back in 2015 and realizing, like, if this is how we're starting, right, with like so few women, like, we have to make a difference too. And so having that vision of equality and diversity in the space was really the inspiration. So yeah, it started from very basic beginnings. You know, as someone working in a master's student, I didn't have a lot of resources. I wasn't well established in my career. And so I didn't have like a lot of executive connections, those types of things. And so I just started with a meetup page and a sign at a restaurant that said Women in Data Networking, and 5 people who registered. And as we all know, lots of people registered and not many people show up.
Yeah.
And so, you know, at the time of the meeting, I was there sitting by myself at a table with no one attending. And so for me, that was quite discouraging to begin with. And I really wanted to leave at that time. But I called my now husband and asked, you know, like, what do I do? I'm so embarrassed. And he's like, just wait 15 minutes, like maybe somebody's late. And so I did. And thankfully I did, because one person came and she ended up bringing 2 other people with her. And that really was the beginning of Women in Data.
Wow, that is a very inspiring story. And I know we've been trying to start like the Women in Data SF chapter from scratch. And, you know, even one person shows up and then you see incremental growth. That's initially I was feeling the same, like, why are people not joining? This is San Francisco, that's supposed to be the Silicon Valley. And then slowly, steadily, I saw like a lot of people joining and showing interest. So it's really, now that I look back, it's powerful to see like the incremental growth. So yeah, thank you again for starting something like this.
Oh, my pleasure. You know, it's amazing what happens when you just stay consistent with things. You know, for the first 3 years, I just led the Sacramento chapter, and it really was just staying consistent with hosting those monthly meetings, because when we want people to show up for us in community, we have to remember that we have to show up for them first. And that's really important and essential.
Yeah, love that. True. And you talked a little bit about like diversity, and you know, this is something that we are still fighting for, because anywhere you go at the top level, you see that the majority is obviously male dominated, and it's difficult. We are trying to get there, but it's still a very big evident gap. So anything that you think as women who are doing well in their careers can do to support and encourage women, apart from building communities like that? Is there something else we can do to bridge that gap?
Yeah, you know, one of the things that I didn't realize until I managed people myself was how important it is to advocate for yourself and share what you're doing. So I am actually I used to be even more so, quite a shy person, and speaking up and even like sharing my accomplishments today feels weird to me. But as I started to manage people, I realized like I'm really interested in what they're doing and what they're doing well. And a lot of times I don't even know as a manager. And for me as a manager too, I also really want to know, like, where do you want to go, and like, what are your career aspirations? And one of the things I really regret early on in my career was not being vocal enough about like all the great things I accomplished and the great things that I did, and advocating for myself in that way, but also being really vocal about like what I wanted and where I wanted to go and how I saw myself getting there. Because most of the time, your people in leadership want to help you and want to support you. Yeah. And if they don't, that's a really clear sign that it's time to move somewhere else, right? And so it's like, you might as well ask and say, because it's better to know right away versus like, okay, I'm gonna just wait and hopefully they'll see me and promote me. So I think that's one way. And then, you know, the other side of things, it's really difficult, right, from the leadership perspective, because the leadership is really where we see such low numbers of women. And so we really need to have sponsors and allies in those leadership roles today, advocating for women and helping mentor and bring them up to those positions. And when a sponsor or an ally gives you that opportunity, take the chance and say yes. Even if you don't feel ready for it, it's an opportunity to learn and to grow. And a lot of times, particularly in management positions, the only way to really learn those skills is by doing them.
Absolutely. And I think very well said, because this is one thing that we all as women have by default. We are not very confident, or even when you see like if there is a job opening, women tend to apply only when they match like 80% compared to men. And it's a confidence thing that we inherently do not, I don't know, we lack it in some aspect. And then it's important to like show what you're doing and talk about it to leadership and put yourself out there. And like you said, like say yes, and then you figure it out how to do it. Yeah. So yeah, that is something that we should coach and encourage fellow women to do that. So moving on, I'm very curious about the latest venture you have, Human Machine Collaboration Institute. Could you talk to us about what it does? And yeah.
Yeah, so this came last year after I came back from a lot of travel, and I so much love the women in data community, but I just felt like there was more in me of what I wanted to create and what I wanted to do. And coming back, even though I left research years ago, I started to really miss it. And the other side of things is, as I got to go across the world and meet different people, there were so many questions about AI and how it's going to change work. And I started to realize that diversity and also how we approach new technology is moving so rapidly. We have almost a dilemma where it's moving faster than we as humans can adapt and learn to it. And I saw this growing up. I grew up in a really small farm town, and it was, a thriving town when I was growing up. But as I left for college and slowly started to come back, I started to see houses deteriorate, and I started to see people leaving and what started to look like a ghost town. And so I started to investigate why this happened. And what happened was the company that was mainly supporting that town had left, but also where a lot of individuals got their livelihood through farming. Because of technology and different farming equipment, they were no longer to farm small farms themselves and had to lease them out to larger corporations. And so I looked at that and I said, wow, technology comes into our lives and it comes in so rapidly. Right. A lot of times people don't have the opportunity to upskill or reskill or even know it's happening, and it can truly decimate a whole town in over a decade. And so when I got to travel around the world, I started to see a lot of anxiety for these types of questions. And I started to see how fast AI was progressing because of the scale, and realized that we need to do something about that. And so the Institute is really all about doing research and bringing it into the hands of people through education and consulting, and helping more people come along this journey as we are going to be working more and more with machines. And so the way I see it is the first, from now until the next 5 years, we're going to be working alongside AI with like AI agents and LLMs. And then soon, the AI is actually probably going to be better than us and take over a lot of portions of our jobs too. And so like, how do we adapt to those changes? And that's another 5 to 10 years out. And then at some point, we'll probably need AI more integrated into our lives, maybe a biological system. And so I really want to create the on-ramps for people to merge with this technology, but also more importantly, to be able to adopt from a psychological perspective. I love posting on LinkedIn because I get such great insights from people. And I recently shared a post about some of the slowness and progression in the data industry. And a lot of people commented that it's because of people, and we are very slow to change. And I found that very insightful. And I think it's really true, right? We can easily create a new application or an amazing AI model or agent, but people adapting it may have more trouble. And so the Human Machine Collaboration Institute is all about providing the most cutting edge research and education and consulting and the community aspect to provide those on-ramps for people to continue to evolve and use technology in ways that benefit humanity.
Amazing. So, I mean, that's a great incentive, and something that I've seen a lot of companies, because generative AI has been like the buzzword for the past 2 years, but how many people actually know it and how many people are actually building in it? A lot of times generative AI does not solve problems of a company, but they still want to use it because, hey, this is what is trending. And sometimes something is not generative AI, but it's published out as generative AI because that's the hype. So I think it's very important to educate everybody, including companies and people, when to use, why to use, and it's important to just upgrade yourself if you're working in AI. So curious to know, like, how can one get involved if they want to support and do something in this institute?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It's a very new initiative, but soon we will be announcing different ways for people to participate in research or also be researched. So one of the things that I've fallen in love with is community and open source, and I really want to open source the way we do research. So because of the tools of the internet, you can see that so many more papers are being published, not associated with universities, but anyone out there can publish papers too. And so I think we have amazing knowledge as a community and as one. And so there will be opportunities if you go to the website, hmci.ai, to sign up as a researcher or as a research participant. So if you want to, try cutting edge research with ways of working with the machine and working with AI, that's a great opportunity. And then if you're interested in learning more about the education, we do provide an executive AI primer along with custom training for different organizations from some of the research that we do as well.
Awesome. I'm definitely going to sign up, because one of the gaps, like you mentioned, like if you don't have a PhD or if you're not in that research setting or research team of your organization, it's so difficult to get involved. And then you're always like, I wish I had done a PhD or something. But there are more ways than that to do research, and that's something I feel there was a gap. So I'm glad that you noticed that and you're doing something about it.
Yeah, and I'm really excited about this because I just think there are so many brilliant minds out there, and how we get great research is by bringing diverse minds to the table, right? Like not only people who work in technology, but maybe people who work in law or people who work in psychology and understand sociology, and like how do we bring in philosophy into the equation, and how do we start to really do cross-industry research by bringing the most diverse minds together in the room. That is where I see things missing, and I think we can start to really make a change, because at the end of the day, research is for people to make their lives better.
Yeah.
And working with AI and working with machines is hopefully here to make our lives better as well. And so I think it's a great opportunity for everybody to take hands and work together.
Yes, and I think that a correct point that you pointed out, like we've been doing research in AI or technology, very focused and made great progress, but it's still, I feel like, a saturated field, like because we are still not utilizing cross-industry or learning insights from different industries and then plugging in AI or technology, or not just AI. I mean, any two fields merging together, which are distinctly different, is something that we are missing out right now. And there are not much research done combining industries, combining the perspective from different industries and bringing it out. So it's a great platform. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, my pleasure. So excited to have you involved and excited to have others listening to this involved.
Absolutely. So like you mentioned that so much is happening in AI, and you can foresee in 5 years, 10 years, things are going to change. How do you keep yourself? And it's a question that I ask everybody who's in this field. How do you keep yourself updated? Because things change so rapidly nowadays.
Yeah, so for me, I love the saying to teach is to learn. So a lot of times the reason why I teach is actually to learn myself. And the reason for that is like, I'm not a big fan of like passive learning where it's like, okay, you watch lessons or take a module without having applications for it. And so for me, like teaching or writing posts or creating content is a great way for me to distill information a lot further. Additionally, like, definitely signing up for different newsletters. I love the Superhuman newsletter and the deeplearning.ai newsletter are some of my favorites. But then also there's like times I have to just shut it all off too, because there's so much news happening in this space. It is overwhelming. And I have to remind myself, like, we're building on years and years of like all this computational power. And so much innovation is happening. Like if I'm not an expert in all of it, that's okay. And so it's like, take a drink from the fire hose and then take a step back and just be like, hey, somebody else is going to be an expert in this area, and that's okay too.
Yeah, I agree. It's very, very overwhelming. And then this concept of like FOMO, I'm like, oh my God, I want to be involved in everything and I don't want to miss out anything. It's really hard. It's easy to say, but I mean, I find myself stuck as well. Like any opportunity, I should go to this conference, I should do this, I should do that. And then I'm like, I don't have time for everything. So I understand that. And it's been a learning curve for me, and I'm sure many of the listeners as well, to like take a setback and like you can let other people also do that and focus on the certain things that you are really passionate about. I think one last question that I'm curious is like, you mentioned teaching a lot, and that is something that is very close to you. So how do you balance that like teaching aspect as well as starting all these multiple entrepreneurial journeys? So how do you find that fine balance of what is your deeper passion and then all of these interesting things as well?
Yeah, I don't know if I ever quite find the balance. Last night I was scrolling TikTok for too long and I stumbled upon this person who like stacks rocks and balances them in like this obscure way, and I was like so mesmerized by it, because I was like, sometimes I feel like that's what I'm doing with my life, but I don't know if they're balancing as well. For me, I started tracking my time in 30-minute increments about 10 years ago. And that has allowed me to really look at where I'm spending my time, how I get derailed in the week. But most importantly, just take the time to observe myself and know like, when do I work best? When do I need breaks? Those types of things. And so being able to observe myself and where I spend my time has been so helpful in me to make small incremental adjustments over the years and to be able to accomplish more, but most importantly, really narrow my focus what's important to be successful and what's most important to accomplish this day or within this week. And so, for me, I built my own planner. Actually, it's called The Observer. And people can go and purchase it, because so many people ask me like, Sadie, how do you track your time and what do you do? And so I finally was just like, okay, I'll share it out with the world. But essentially it comes down to a couple things. Like at the beginning of the year, I set like a life vision and a vision for that year. And then I go on a monthly basis and I look at that vision for the year and I'm like, what key things would I do this month that's going to like make progress to it? And then on a weekly basis, I look at, okay, just the month. How do I make progress on those things I set for the month? And then on a daily basis, I'm just looking at the week. So I'm trying to always narrow down my focus, right? If I look at like my lifetime goals or my year goals, they can feel so overwhelming. And so I really try to always narrow it down to like, what do I have to do this week? And then from that week, how can I make progress on it in this day? And then I take the time every day to write out what I did the previous day. And so it's a method that I've been using for years now, and it works really well for me. I just kind of came up with it and adjusted it over time, but it really helps me to, what's most important is to focus my time. And so, some days are spent more on women in data, some days are more spent on HMCI, some are on teaching, and it all kind of ebbs and flows, but then creates this really interesting and beautiful life that I've created and I enjoy, and it works for me.
Awesome. I think I would definitely check. You said it's called Observer?
Yeah, so it's called, if you go to theobserver.store, I can share a link with you so that the listeners can have access to it too.
Yes, that will be great. Awesome. Okay, I know I said last question, but this is definitely my last question. So you have in your career, of course, received numerous accolades for your work. Is there anything that stands out as like the most prized possession for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was actually thinking about this the other day, and I was like, you know what? The days where I'm the happiest are really nothing special. There are days that I did my 4 daily habits. I felt like I learned something. I felt like I made progress on it. And, one of the dilemmas about being a founder is you always look at how things can be better. And so one of my dilemmas is sometimes I forget to look in the rearview mirror and go, oh my goodness, like look how far you come and how amazing it is. And I admit that, and it's something that I'm trying to work on. But at the end of the day, like days where I'm happiest are where I had quiet time in the morning, I got to move my body, I got to create, I got to learn something, and I got to spend time with my husband and my dog, So it's, for me, it's the normal days are where I find a lot of joy. But I would say if there's one thing that I'm super proud of is just women in data and all of the individuals in the space who come together and support one another and grow together and lead. And it's truly inspiring. I just last week was in London visiting the London chapter. I've worked with some of the chapter leads for like 3 years virtually, and to meet them in person and to see how much they care for the community and take the time to invest in it and support one another is just really inspiring. Like, it's been 9 years since leading Women in Data, and it still like doesn't stop inspiring me, like meeting members and hearing their stories and hearing their journey and seeing them support one another and seeing them grow and be successful in their career and lead. Like, it's overwhelmingly just encouraging. And so for me, like, to have a space like Women in Data is just something that I am so proud of every day.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I can, within joining the community, I think we had the first event, and after the event, I saw like messages coming from people, and they shared like how important and useful it was and how much benefit they got. I mean, getting those messages from just like 2 or 3 people was so inspiring for me. So I can imagine how inspired you feel. All right. So just the final section, which I call rapid fire, which is borrowed from a TV show. And I'm going to ask you some questions, and you have to be rapid and full of fire. All right. Piano or harp? Which one do you prefer to play during a long day?
I would say the harp because it's the newest one. So I'm going to go with harp on that one.
All right. Abstract art or fashion design? What's your go-to creative outlet?
Oh, that one's tough. I'm going to say coming up with clothes, just because it's something I have to do every day. And so, yes, I love posting my outfits on Instagram. I do love art, but I hate cleaning up after I'm done.
What's one SQL function you couldn't live without?
Actually, I really love average. Just like summarizing something up is like so handy, and the fact that you can even do an analysis within SQL, I think, is kind of a magic side behind it.
Great, yeah. If you could have coffee with any AI pioneer, who would that be?
Sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
If you could have coffee with one AI pioneer, anybody that comes to your mind?
I think that would have to be Alan Turing, and the reason is I think he just had so much foresight in coming up with the Turing test. Even some people are like, oh, it's not perfect, but to do that before we're even at the place we are today is so amazing. So I'd love to sit down and chat and share with him where we're at today and get his thoughts on things.
Absolutely, great choice. Describe data science in 3 words.
Curious, scientific, problem solving.
That's wonderful. What's your favorite AI or tech movie? Or book?
Well, I really like Her right now because of everything with like chatbots and LLMs. But my favorite like sci-fi is Ready Player One. And I think that's what we'll eventually see.
One of those movies we saw growing up is definitely gonna.
I know, and then it's like we're living a movie. It's crazy.
Great. Blockchain or AI? Which one do you think will have a bigger impact in the next decade?
I think AI will to begin with, and then where I see blockchain really coming into play is to provide a security aspect to AI and to get us paid when we work in a really AI futuristic environment.
Yes.
But AI overall.
Yeah, agreed. What's one tech gadget you can't live without?
I'd definitely say my Apple Watch, just because I love tracking data. I love tracking data on myself. And so like, I'm really mad if I wasn't wearing it during a workout, because I'm like, "Oh, I want to count that data."
Coming from a true data person. Yes. Early bird or night owl?
Definitely early bird. I love my quiet time in the morning, and I get my best work done in the morning.
Yeah, likewise. I used to be a night owl, but it's completely pivoted. Name a data science concept with the letter P.
Bayesian models.
Awesome. Yeah, that was it. And yeah, again, thank you so much for coming, and just personally to say, like, you've inspired me a lot because of Women in Data and all the other initiatives that you do. And I love reading your posts on LinkedIn as well. So happy to have you here.
Oh, it's been my pleasure, and thank you for all you do. And it takes everybody coming together and leading the community and leading the way and sharing their thoughts. So thank you for everything you do, and thank you for starting this podcast.